The Meanings of the Quran. Volume 1. The Meanings of the Quran. Translation of Mutalib al-Furqan. Volume I. Ghulam Ahmed Parwez. Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing. Title of the book, The Meanings of the Quran, Volume I. Author, Ghulam Ahmed Parwez. Translated and edited, Dr. Ejaz Rasool, Glasgow, UK. ISBN number, 9781797747989. Contact, Talooi Islam Trust. 25B Gulberg 2. Lahore 54660 Pakistan. List of other works, English, by the author. 1. Exposition of the Quran. 2. Islam, a challenge to religion. 3. What is Islam? Available from Amazon. 4. The Book of Destiny. 5. The Quranic Laws. 6. Reasons for the decline of Muslims. 7. Letters to Tahira. 8. Lugat al-Quran, Dictionary of Quranic Words and Terms, Volume 1 and 2, available from Amazon. 9. The Quranic System of Sustenance, available from Amazon. 10. The Life in the Hereafter, What Does the Quran Say? Available from Amazon. 11. The Status of Hadith in Islam, available from Amazon. 12. The Human Self and Allah, available from Amazon. 13. The Human Self and Iblis, available from Amazon. 14. The Meanings of the Quran, Volume 7, available from Amazon. 15. The Quranic Perspective on Apostasy, Slavery, and Concubines, available from Amazon. 16. The Finality of the Prophethood and the Ahmadiyya, available from Amazon. Some of these books are available from Talooi Islam Trust. 25, B. Gulberg 2. Lahore, 54660, Pakistan. Email, taloeislam@gmail.com. Telephone, 0092 0 4235753666. WhatsApp, 0092310480-0818. About the author. Ghulam Ahmed Parwez was born in Butala, Punjab, in British India on July 9, 1903 into a profoundly religious family. His grandfather, who was deeply religious and belonged to the Hanafi school of thought, was a renowned religious scholar who intended to make the author inherit his knowledge and religious understanding. As a consequence, his education and training was carried out under the direction of his grandfather. While he studied the traditional religious teachings, he also had the desire and inkling to question its content using his intellect and reasoning. This led to his inner conflict with the external religious environment, and he continued to question the prevalent religious concepts and practices. He noticed that whatever was being taught as part of the religion was being referred to some imam or religious scholar for authority. It was also noted in the religious literature that whatever the forefathers had followed should be obeyed without any question, and this was considered to be a requirement of Islam. For Parwez, this did not satisfy his desire to seek reason and logic in every claim and statement made within the religious literature. However, he could not express these doubts and reservations initially due to his respect for his grandfather and the constraints of the religious environment which prevailed at the time in his town. Later, due to his employment, he moved to Lahore, now part of Pakistan, and found a degree of freedom to question some of these religious concepts and beliefs. After the death of his grandfather, he found complete freedom to pursue his line of inquiry and research into the prevalent Islamic beliefs, doctrines, ideologies, and religious practices. This led to his discovering that most of these have been acquired from others. He tried to study the Quran using the traditional religious approach but was unable to find the answers to all his doubts, which required satisfaction from a logical point of view. He also studied the life of the last messenger and the establishment of the Islamic State in the 7th century in his quest to determine the cause which contributed to this greatest revolution based on the Quran. He especially paid attention to the statement from the last messenger, "The Quran is not a product of my thinking or that of any other human being, and that this is the message from Allah." He soon learned the procedure to understand the Quran. Through his contact with the famous philosopher and poet, Allama Iqbal, who had a deep interest in the Quran, Parwez concluded that to understand the Quran one has to understand three fundamentally important points. 1. The Quran calls itself light, nur, and a light does not need any external source or aid to make itself visible. It makes itself evident and also exposes the reality of those things which are within its domain. 2. The Quran is revealed in the Arabic language and, to understand it correctly, one needs to understand the Arabic context which was prevalent at the time of its revelation. 3. The Quran has guided us by saying that through tasrif al-ayat, through cross-reference of the verses of the Quran, it makes its guidance clear, e.g. c. 6:106. In order to meet the second requirement regarding the precise meaning of the Arabic words in the Quran, he researched and compiled a Lugat al-Quran, now translated into English, which is a dictionary of all the words and terms used in the Quran, and which includes the meanings which were prevalent among the Arabs at the time of the Quranic revelation. For the third requirement of tasrif al-ayat, the Quran is different from books written by human beings, whereas the latter are usually divided based on various subjects. The Quran is based on mentioning a reality in one verse or verses and then its further explanation is noted in another place or places. For example, in Surah Al-An'am the Quran states, "And thus do we explain the signs by various verses, so that they acknowledge you have explained them, and we make the Quran clear for a people who know." 6:106. In order to meet this requirement, Parwez felt the need to compile all the verses under one subject as referred in various verses of the Quran, and he compiled a book in Urdu titled Tabweeb al-Quran, i.e. Classification of the Quran. This made it easy to refer to various subjects and look at all the verses mentioned in the Quran relating to a subject. Along with writing and producing literature on the Quran, Parwez also held a regular weekly meeting in Lahore to deliver a dars, lecture explaining the Quran, in Urdu, and these are also available as audio and video recordings. He dedicated most of his life to researching the Quran and its significance in relation to presenting an alternative solution for human problems, and answering questions relating to human creation, its purpose, and the question of death and the next life. He also participated in the struggle for independence during the period 1938 to 1947, and the creation of Pakistan, which was based on the ideology of the Quran, with a view to establishing an Islamic state for the Muslims of the subcontinent. He worked very closely with the founder of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, Quaid-e-Azam or Great Leader, and had regular discussions with him on various aspects of the message of the Quran. In order to support the movement for a separate state for the Muslims of India, and to counter the arguments put forward by some of the religious lobby who opposed the creation of Pakistan, he published a monthly journal called Tulu-e-Islam, Dawn of Islam, commencing in 1938. This monthly journal continues to be published by Idara, Tulu-e-Islam from Lahore. Parwez joined the Indian Civil Service in the Home Department in 1927, and after the creation of Pakistan, he migrated to Karachi, and continued to serve in the same department till 1955, when he took early retirement and devoted the rest of his life fully to his work on the Quran. He moved to Lahore from Karachi and settled there. He left this life on February 24, 1985 in Lahore, and his body was laid to rest in Lahore. Foreword. I am an ordinary seeker of knowledge of the Quran. I have spent all my life in endeavoring to understand this supreme book and making it comprehensible to others. When I say, all my life, that is not an exaggeration. From the age of 5 or 6 years when I was sent to school up till now, when the stages of my life have traversed more than 72 years, barring those days when I was unable to due to some reason, hardly any day passed when the Quran did not remain in front of my eyes. In the first part of my life its study was undertaken in the traditional orthodox way. After this, when consciousness awakened so that I could observe and evaluate the facts with my own eyes, I then realized that whatever I had gleaned from the Quran previously had drawn me far from the reality. As a result of this, doubts and suspicions began to arise about Islam itself, for which a satisfactory explanation was not forthcoming from any direction. For many years I wandered perplexed in pain and uncertainty in these same thorny vales of doubts and misgivings. During this quest in the wilderness, I also learned and became aware of why our educated youth is becoming discontented with religion. Fortune came to my aid, and with Allah's help this reality became evident to me about the correct way in which to understand the Quran. The Quran has called itself light, nur, and light is evidence of its own presence. In order to seek this light, one does not need external lamps, therefore the Quran can only be understood from the Quran itself. The one who, Allah, sent down the Quran has stated, "It is for us to explain the Quran." 75:19. And it is on this basis that it is stated about the Quran. It makes all things clear. 16:89. There is no crookedness in it. 18:1. There is no contradiction or discrepancy in it. 4:82. There is no vagueness, no confusion in it, it is a clear, perspicuous, explicit, illuminating book. Allah has stated that the Quran has been revealed in clear, explicit Arabic language, 26:195. From the study of linguistic knowledge this reality had become clearly evident to me about how much variation transpires in the meanings of the words of languages through the passage of time. Therefore, in order to understand the Quran, it became essential to establish what the meanings were taken to be of these words at the time of the revelation of the Quran. It should be made clear that not only is the meaning of the Quran from Allah, its words are also from Allah. This is why it is declared to be the word of Allah, Kalam Allah, 9:6. The style of the Quran is not like that of ordinary books. The state of ordinary books is that the book is divided into various chapters. Every chapter covers a particular subject and all aspects relating to the subject are noted down all together within this chapter. This is not the style of the Quran. Regarding this, think about it as being a compilation of different sermons delivered over a period of 23 years. A statement is made in it at one point, and its further explanation is given at another point, an addition at some other place, and an exception in another surah. Furthermore, the wider aspects of various facts in relation to different subjects are repeatedly brought to the fore. It has called this mode of explanation tasrif al-ayat, cross-referencing of verses, i.e., bringing verses to mind through repetition, 6:106. It is in this way that it has also defined and made the meanings of its terms clear. The next condition for understanding the Quran is to reflect profoundly on it, 4:82, i.e., to understand it through reflection and reason, intellect and vision, knowledge and consciousness. This command to ponder profoundly on the Quran is neither for any specific individual, nor for some particular era, it is for all individuals and for all eras. This is why the Quran cannot be understood by following previous generations, nor can the comprehension and reasoning of someone else be the authority and final word for others. One can benefit from the reflections of others because knowledge is a legacy for mankind, but it can be neither an authority, nor the final word. In relation to deliberating on the Quran, Allah has also stated that, "Soon will we show them our signs in the furthest regions of the universe and in their own selves, until it becomes manifest to them that this is the truth." Al-Haqq 41:53. This means that as the undiscovered realities, of the outer universe and within the human self itself, are unveiled, the truth of the Quranic proclamations will keep becoming ever clearer before us. Therefore it is essential for the one pondering on the Quran that he should bear in mind the level to which human knowledge has reached within his own era. The Quran presents solutions for the demands of human life. If someone does not even know what the demands are of human life in his era, and to what level the strivings of the human intellect have reached regarding them, then what guidance can he acquire from the Quran? Another point is also worthy of being understood in relation to pondering on the Quran. Some commands and laws are noted in the Quran and some realities. The commands and laws are detailed in such words whose meanings are precisely defined. but realities, especially those realities which are connected to metaphysics, are referred to using metaphors, allegories, and similes. Abstract realities can only be explained in this way. It is obvious that every scholarly mind can form a concept from these metaphors and allegories regarding these realities according to his own understanding and level of knowledge. Therefore it is understandable to have intellectual differences regarding these concepts. But as far as the Quranic commands or guidance are concerned, no difference can exist in these. The state of Quranic guidance is also this, that some commands in it are defined, and some are in the form of principles and values. As far as the principles and values are concerned, the Quran has not itself specified details about their practical application. These have been left to the Islamic system of the state, that it should devise ways to implement these practically according to the demands of their respective times. In this way, unity of action will be created in the Ummah and will be maintained. In relation to understanding the Quran, it is essential to bear in mind this important fact too. One fundamental condition for understanding the Quran is also this, that until the time that you do not free your mind of pre-established ideologies, beliefs, and concepts, the correct meaning of the Quran will not be understood. 56:79. Any individual who comes to the Quran with some pre-established belief so that he can obtain authority and support for his view from the Quran, cannot access the truth. This was the method which I ascertained for comprehending the Quran from the Quran itself, and I embarked on an endeavor to understand it again from the start according to this. It is obvious that this technique was very patience-testing and these phases required great determination and courage, but without traversing these, the aim could not have been achieved. The remaining part of my life has passed in traversing this mountain and digging a tunnel through it. And with this feeling of gratitude and humility I bow my head before Allah for the support and opportunity He has bestowed on me leading to great success. As far as the phase of ascertaining the meanings and concepts of the Quranic words, synonyms, were concerned, after many years of hard labor I compiled the Quranic Lughat, dictionary, which is now published in 4 volumes. Along with this, in connection with Tasrif al-Ayat, I also continued with the process of the compilation of Tabweeb al-Quran, classification of the Quran which is now published. On the basis of both of these I completed the exposition of the full Quran which is now published in 30 parts, Parwez. During the same period, I published the Quranic teaching and realities in the form of different writings which have become very popular especially among the younger educated generation, Mano Yazdan, Ibls-o Adam, Ju-e-Nur, Bark-e-Tur, Shola-e Mastur, Maraji Saniyat, Jahani Farda, Kitab ul-Taqdir, Katminabawait or Tariqi Amadiyat and Sha'ari Risalat are different parts in this same enlightened series. In parallel with this, I also started the practice of holding a weekly dars of the Quran which, by the grace of Allah, is continuing for the past almost 25 years. Since in a dars every matter unfolds before us in great detail, therefore this process has proven to be very effective, comprehensive, and attractive. It was a demand of friends and attendees from the beginning that a tafsir of the Quran should be compiled on the basis of these dars. I envisaged immense difficulties in this task, though through intense effort spanning years, one of my close friends, Malik Zahur Ahmed, had transferred these dars which are recorded on a tape recorder, onto paper, but the style of a dars is completely distinct from the written form. For a tafsir, related material has to be sifted and separated from the mountain of detail covered in these dars and rearranged in a novel and coordinated form. That is why I could not muster sufficient courage to commence this lengthy process. But as of last year, this demand by my companions acquired such an intensity that I eventually assented. By continuously writing for an extended period of time, my hand now becomes tired. A solution to this problem was presented by another friend, Akhlaq Ahmed, so I continued to dictate the tafsir and he kept on writing it. And within a short period of 3 months, a draft of its first volume was ready, which is now being presented. This volume is spread over nearly 375 pages, but you will note that it includes Surah Al-Fatiha and only the first 29 verses of Surah Al-Baqarah. After studying the tafsir, however, this fact will become clear to you that these initial verses merited this detail. From this, a complete outline of Islam emerges before us. My view is that as we continue to progress forward, this amount of detail will no longer be required, and subsequent volumes will cover a proportionately larger portion of the Quran. In any event, I have commenced the journey. I do not know how long it will take to traverse further stages and when the final destination will be reached. At this point in time I can say nothing more than this. My affair I commit to Allah, for Allah watches over His servants. 40:44. In relation to this tafsir, keep the following points in mind. 1. I have often said that the Quran cannot be understood through the tafsir which are commonly available, because the major part in them is outside of the Quran, and the personal beliefs and ideas of the writer, mufassir, influence the Quranic guidance. The significance of this tafsir, written by me, is that the meaning of every verse is made clear in the light of other parts of the Quran itself. Furthermore, since my connection is not with any particular sect, and my beliefs and views are based on the Quran, therefore you will not find the contamination of any sectarian stain in this tafsir. 2. The literal translation of the verses is noted where required. Generally, their meaning is explained because you will appreciate later on that the translation of the Quran cannot be done in any language. 3. The dictionary meaning of the word is given to the extent that it is required in the verse being analyzed. The remainder of the meanings can be found in the Lugat al-Quran. 4. Those verses which have been mentioned in order to further explain some other verse, only their summary is noted there, their detail and interpretation will be given at their own place. 5. Since I have been writing continuously without a break about the Quran for the last 40 years, therefore many matters will appear in this tafsir which I will have explained at some point in my previous writings. 6. In this tafsir the negation of those non-Quranic beliefs and views which are commonly prevalent among us under the name of Islam continued to take place automatically. But in this regard I have named neither any sect nor any personalities, barring a few such places where it was unavoidable. It is not intended from this to in any way mock these sects or personalities. The requirement is to counter their beliefs which are contrary to the Quran. 7. The chapters of this tafsir are not according to the Quranic division, but instead are according to the division of topics in this tafsir. Finally, I extend my heartfelt thanks to all those friends who helped me in the organization, writing, compiling, publishing, etc., of this work. In this respect, foremost is the name of my very close companion Siraj Munir, whose hard work facilitated the phase of correction of this work. And in conclusion of this foreword, it is necessary to acknowledge and express this matter, that in relation to understanding the Quran, this is, nevertheless, purely a human endeavor, which can neither be considered to be free from error and omission, nor the final word. As I noted at the start, I am just an ordinary student of the Quran. I have never considered my status to be higher than this, either previously or now. Salam. G. A. Parwez. 25B, Gulberg 2, Lahore. October 8, 1975. Glossary. Some significant Arabic terms which have appeared in this volume are explained together with their meanings. Some of these meanings are taken from the book by the author titled Islam, A Challenge to Religion. The meanings of other terms are based on the Lugat al-Quran by the author. Those terms not covered here will have their meanings noted where these appear in the text for the first time. Batil, this means not only destructive pursuits, rather every one of those things is termed as batil which has no constructive result, when something is tested against a standard and it fails to meet that criteria, i.e. haqq is that which meets the standard and batil is that which does not meet the standard. Hence it is the opposite of haqq. Batil does not denote merely those ideas or actions which possess destructive potentialities but includes all thinking and conduct that does not lead to constructive outcomes. Deen, according to the Quran, Every nation on earth has been blessed from time to time with divine guidance through the agency of the messengers of Allah, Anbiya, who received the divine revelation, Wahi. All these messengers were entrusted with the establishment of Deen. But with the passage of time, their followers failed to maintain that Deen in the pristine purity in which it had been established by their Anbiya, and they deviated from the right course, altered and modified Allah's revealed guidance, and foisted upon it elements utterly alien and repugnant to its spirit. Deen thus generated into religion, madhab, and lost its soul. The Quran rules out the plurality of deens and contemplates only one deen. Haqq, this is a very comprehensive term of the Quran. It is usually translated in English as truth or right, but in fact it has a much wider meaning. According to Lane, its primary signification is suitableness to the requirements of wisdom. Justice, right, or rightness, truth, reality or fact, or to the exigencies of the case, as the suitableness of the foot or a door in respect of its socket for turning around rightly, the state or quality, or property of being just, proper, right, correct, or true. The state of being established or confirmed as a truth or fact, everlasting existence, valid, substantial, or real. Existing as an established fact so as to be undeniable. These several meanings of this word make it perfectly clear that haqq is by no means confined to the realm of thoughts and ideas, notions, and beliefs. It stands for those constructive results of conceptions and beliefs which manifest themselves in a tangible form and are in harmony with the changing needs of the times. No belief or theory relating to this world can be described as haqq unless its truth is established by a positive manifestation of its constructive potentialities. These constructive results will be abiding and imperishable, for the word haqq is used only for things that are abiding and imperishable. Iman, to be convinced, to accept, to verify something, to rely upon, or have confidence in. This is usually translated in English as belief or faith, and faith in turn signifies acceptance without proof or argument, or without reference to reason or thought, knowledge or insight. Faith is generally regarded as the negation of knowledge or reason. Iman is synonymous with conviction and is based on reason and knowledge. The Quran does not recognize as Iman any belief that is divorced from reason and involves blind acceptance of any claim. It is true that Deen involves the acceptance of certain things which cannot be known through sense perception, but there is no reason to presume that things which cannot be perceived do not exist. Indeed, our reason and thinking compel us to recognize the existence of many such things. In any event, Iman, according to the Quran, signifies the conviction that results from full mental acceptance and intellectual satisfaction. This kind of conviction bestows a feeling of Amen, inner contentment and peace. Amen and Iman have a common root, Amen. And a mu'min is one who accepts the truth in such a way that it ensures his own peace and helps him to safeguard the peace and security of the rest of mankind. Indeed, al-mu'min is one of the attributes of Allah himself, 59:23. Kufr, this is the antonym or negation of Iman. It means to deny the truth, to prevent, to defy the laws of Allah. Basically, the word means to cover or conceal. One who denies the truth in fact seeks to conceal it, he is, therefore, called a kafir. Kufr means open denial, not hypocrisy. The hypocrite professes to believe in a thing that he does not accept in his heart. The kafir, on the other hand, openly proclaims his opposing stance. That is why the Quran condemns and consigns the hypocrite to the lowest depths of hell. The definition of kufr, however, is not confined to denial of the truth, it includes the concealment or withholding of the means of subsistence, which Allah has created for the good of all mankind, and which He wants to be freely available to all. Madhab, religion. This literally means the way, or course. This word does not appear in the Quran, and in Islamic jurisprudence, fiqh, it stands for school of thought. The English word religion is usually translated as madhab, and since Islam is generally described in English as a religion, the word madhab has come to be used for it. This a fundamental fallacy. it might be stressed once again that Islam is a deen, not a madhab. Today, the only divine deen is Islam, whose principles are preserved in the Quran. Malaika, commonly translated in English as angels, but this prevalent religious conception of the word is different from its Quranic conception. The universe can be divided into two parts, the material world which we can perceive through the senses, and the world beyond our powers of perception. The Quran, in the first instance, used the word malaika to denote the forces of nature at work in the world of matter. For instance, when it states in the allegorical account of Adam, that all the malaika prostrate themselves before Adam, it means that man has been endowed with the capacity to subdue and conquer the forces of nature. Moreover, besides the physical forces of nature, the Quranic meaning of malaika includes the psychological forces within the human individual himself. When used with reference to the other part of the universe, the one beyond our powers of perception, malaika stands for the forces at work there to fulfill Allah's purpose, and to shape in practice, the divine scheme of things. In this sense, the word includes the agencies through which the word of Allah has been revealed to various anbiya, for the guidance of mankind. So in this sense, malaika may also be called messengers. Malaika are not endowed with any will or independent power, they are devoted to the performance of their respective duties and cannot act otherwise. Man is the only being in the whole universe endowed with a free will and independent power. Nabi, this is usually translated as prophet, one who prophesies. This translation is again incorrect and misleading. Nabi is not a derivative of naba'an, which means to inform. In olden times the word Nabi was used for a special functionary in the Jewish temple whose function was to prophesy future events. In its Quranic connotation the word Nabi is derived from nabwatan, which means an elevated place. Therefore it means a person standing on a pedestal, in other words, one who lives in this material world but can also perceive the unseen world beyond, because he, such a person, is endowed with divine revelation, wahi. The function or office of the Nabi is called Nabawat, that is, the function of securing divine guidance through revelation. See also Rasool. Quran, the book that Allah gave to Muhammad through revelation, and which he passed on to the Muslims in the form in which we know it today. The internal evidence provided by the Quran itself, as well as historical research, proves beyond a shadow of doubt that not even a comma of the original Quranic text has been changed, or is likely to be altered in the future. This is a unique attribute of the Quran and is not shared by any other revealed book now extant. The Quran embodies the deen revealed to the earlier Anbiya in its true and perfect form. This book does not give us merely a code of ethics, it provides us with a code of life which embodies guidance, principles, and laws relating to every sphere of human life and activity. The Quran, according to Islam, is the final authority in matters of deen. The injunctions and the principles contained in the book form the cornerstone of the Islamic polity, and the limits laid down by it provide the framework within which the laws of the Islamic State may be formulated. These principles, or limits, or framework, are immutable, but the statutes made by the state within these four corners are open to modification and change according to the needs of the times. The Quran is the last of the divine books because Nubuwwat ended with Muhammad. No subsequent human opinion or pronouncement in matters of deen, therefore, can be recognized as authoritative, nor can any man-made law repugnant to the Quran be regarded as binding upon Muslims. The Quran is a book of guidance for all mankind and transcends the barriers of time and space. The Islamic State is an instrument for the enforcement of the laws and injunctions embodied in the Quran. Rabb, usually translated in English as the Lord. Again, the English equivalent does not convey the real meaning and significance of the Arabic original. Rabb means one who enables a thing or person to grow and develop and eventually to realize all its potentialities, and the process by which a person, or object, thus fulfills himself is called Rabubayat. Nothing in the universe comes into being in a state of perfection or fulfillment, it is born with certain potentialities which, when developed and actualized, enable the object concerned to become what it was designed to be. Like other objects and beings in the universe, man is also endowed with manifold potentialities which, if properly developed, enable him to rise from the animal to the human level. The Quran seeks to establish, in accordance with the divine laws, a social order under which the latent potentialities of every individual can be fully realized. This realization of the individual's potentials will include the sustenance and growth of his body as well as the fulfillment of his personality. This kind of social system is called the Rububiyyat order, and its establishment is the ultimate end and purpose of the Deen of Islam. Rasool, the duty of the Nabi does not end with the securing of divine guidance. In fact, this is but the beginning of his task. The root of the word Rasool means a messenger, or who has a message to deliver. It is the duty of the Nabi to deliver to mankind the message revealed to him by Allah without the slightest change or modification. It is by virtue of this function that he is called a Rasool. But even the faithful delivery of the divine message does not complete the performance of the Rasool's function. He is also responsible for setting up a social order in accordance with the principles enshrined in the divine message that he has delivered. In other words, he is entrusted with the establishment of Allah's kingdom upon earth. He is charged with the revolutionary function of ending the sway of tyrannical, oppressive, and self-seeking rulers and priests and establish a free order of society in which men will not be dependent upon other men and will not be subject to anything except the divine law. The Rasool, from this point of view, appears as a great revolutionary who does not content himself with sermons but practically enforces by example the divine law and seeks to bring all men under its sway. This is the real function of the Rasool, Risalat. In view of the above explanations, it is clear that Nabi and Rasool are two facets of a single entity, or two faces of the same coin. A Nabi is also a Rasool, and vice versa. The plural form of Rasool is Rasul. Nabawa, or the reception of the revelation of divine guidance by Anbiya or Rasul, ended with Muhammad. The guidance revealed to him is preserved and enshrined fully and exactly in the Quran. But the function of Risalat, or the delivery of the divine message to all mankind and the establishment of a social order in accordance with its principles, has devolved upon the nation or ummah that has iman in that book, i.e. the Quran. Ruh, usually translated as spirit or soul. Spirit has a special meaning in Christian metaphysics, and soul is the expression for peculiar notion in Greek philosophy. The Quranic conception of ruh differs essentially from soul as well as spirit. Its most appropriate translation would be divine energy, which expresses itself through a free and self-determining will. Free will is possessed only by Allah, who imparts it to human beings also. No other being is endowed with this power. The Quran holds that the power of the human will is not a product of man's natural constitution. It cannot, therefore, be called a material force. It is a power specially bestowed by Allah upon men. That explains why Allah has described it as his ruh, meaning thereby the human personality, which is the bearer of the free will. This should not, however, be taken to mean that the human personality is a part of the divine personality. Personality is absolutely indivisible. No personality, therefore, can possibly be a part of any other personality. We are all familiar with the fallacy that the human spirit is a part of the spirit of Allah bogged down in the world of matter, and that the whole end and purpose of man's life on earth is to purge his spirit of its material impurity, so that it may merge again with the divine spirit. This misconception is thoroughly repugnant to the spirit of the Quran. Allah has endowed every individual with an inchoate personality, and the purpose of his worldly life is to develop his personality so that it may be able, after death, to continue its journey further. The word ruh has been used in the Quran in other senses also. But in the present work it has not been used in any of the other senses. The other meanings are, therefore, not given here. Shaitan, man is endowed with manifold faculties and is free to use them as he wills. These faculties include his impulses. If he uses these faculties in accordance with the laws of Allah, constructive results, which are conducive to benefit the interests of all mankind, follow. If, on the other hand, he uses his faculties in a manner repugnant to the laws of Allah, the results are destructive. The impulse that induces man to use his faculties in contravention of the divine laws is called shaitan. The common English equivalent for this word, namely, devil, does not properly express the Quranic sense of the original term. The word shaitan has also been used for defiant or rebellious human beings, in other words, for such men as defy the laws of Allah themselves and also induce others to defy those laws. Since destructive activity inevitably brings frustration and sorrow, shaitan has also been called Iblis, which means a disappointed being who fails to secure happiness in life. Shirk, obedience to man-made laws along with or in contravention of the laws of Allah. Islam does not permit obedience to any laws other than those laid down by Allah. Indeed, not only actual obedience to other laws but even the belief that it is permissible and proper to obey these laws is tantamount to shirk. Polytheism is generally understood to mean the worship of idols. It is, of course, true that idol worship, or the worship of any of the forces of nature, amounts to shirk. But this definition is not exhaustive, nor are these forms of worship the most serious manifestations of shirk, for they result mainly from ignorance. The most heinous form of shirk is the obedience of laws and injunctions other than those of Allah. From the Islamic point of view, the important thing is obedience, not worship. Muslims obey Allah, they do not worship Him in the general sense of the word. Taqdeer, this is generally translated as fate, and fatalism is widely believed to be one of the fundamental elements of the Islamic creed. This is absolutely wrong. A theory of life which is based upon the freedom of the human will cannot possibly have anything to do with fatalism. Human freedom and fatalism are mutually contradictory concepts. A mango stone embedded in soil, if properly looked after and nourished, has the capacity to grow into a mango tree which will eventually yield the mango fruit. The realization of this potentiality of the mango stone is called its taqdeer. To be more precise, taqdeer means measure. The true measure of the mango stone is the mango tree. If a stone does not grow into a tree, it does not conform to its measure. On the other hand, no mango stone can grow beyond its measure. This is the destiny of the mango stone. Man has been endowed with manifold potentials. If he follows the right path in life and adheres to it, his potentialities are gradually realized, and his personality is so developed that he is enabled to attain the perfect human stature in this life and to tread the evolutionary stages yet to come beyond this world, the life in the hereafter. This development of the individual is called his taqdeer. Taqwa, the common English equivalent, namely, piety, does not properly express the real meaning of the word. Deviation from the path of right conduct leads man to ruin. Taqwa helps to keep him on the right path and thus save him from ruin. But merely saving oneself from ruin is a negative virtue, whereas the Quran regards the positive aspect of life as being of fundamental importance. In the context of the Quran, therefore, taqwa involves not only saving oneself from the forces of destruction but also stabilizing one's personality through the preservation and enforcement of the laws of Allah. To be more concrete, it means the faithful and efficient performance of all the duties that Allah has enjoined upon man through revealed guidance. This meaning is wide enough to include loftiness of character and purity of conduct. One who leads a life of taqwa is called muttaqi. Tawbah, while on his way to a particular place, an individual reaches a crossing, and from there he takes a turn and continues onwards. But after a short while he realizes that he has put himself onto the wrong path which will not lead him to his destination. He must now turn back and return to the point from where he took the wrong turn. This kind of return is called tawbah. It is obvious, however, that a mere return to the crossroads will not take the man to his destination. He will also have to adopt the right path. Tawbah, therefore, covers all three aspects of the process: realizing one's error, retracing one's steps, and then taking the right course. Editor's note. This is an English translation of the Urdu exposition titled Mutalib ul-Furqan, Volume I, written by Ghulam Ahmad Parwez. This volume covers Chapter 1, Surah Al-Fatiha, and Chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, up to verse 229. In this book the word Allah is used when referred to in the Quran, and God is used when reference is made outside the Quran. The verses quoted from it are noted in the format of 220, meaning Surah 2, Chapter 2, verse 20. The numbering of the verses is in line with the format used in the copy of the Quran by Abdullah Yusuf Ali. The names of the surahs are also given when the author has noted these in the main text. Footnotes have been added where some additional explanation is thought to be required, and these have been marked as ed. Where the footnote is from the author himself, nothing is noted after this. The Quran is not a book of religion, it puts itself forward as a divine book with a view to providing guidance for the whole of mankind for all times. It is a book which gives an alternative system for mankind called deen, freeing man from systems predicated on human laws. This system of deen is based on the permanent values as noted in the Quran. An understanding of the Quran can only be reached by those who view deen as a divine system in opposition to man-devised systems. The verses which are addressed to the Jamaat-e-Momineen should be viewed as Allah's address to those who, through their own volition, have accepted Iman in the Quranic values and are focused on acquiring precisely that eminent self which can understand the outline of the system in detail. Fundamentally, the Quran tells us that every man-devised system will always suffer from human imbalances. As a consequence, they will inevitably be consumed by fear and huzn. Only by following the guidance of Wahi from Allah can human beings eliminate this fear and huzn from their world. For a balanced system to emerge, the objective standard founded on the Quranic concept of Allah is necessary. This concept is based on His attributes and is distinct from any other religious concept of God, including sectarian versions of Islam, around the world. The Quranic concept of deen as a system set in confrontation to man-devised systems is foundational to Parwez's writings. He has written extensively on various aspects of the Quran, authoring numerous books expounding the Quran in detail. His book on Rabi'u Bayt, the Quranic system of sustenance, analyzes the economic problems faced by humanity and their logical solution as presented by the Quran. Despite technological advances, man-devised systems have not been able to solve the fundamental issues of man's existence on this planet. The Quran has categorically declared to man that he will remain the same in essence throughout his finite individual existence on this planet if he is not correctly guided. Being a possessor of a conscious self, he is intrinsically accountable for his finite choices and his way of life, which is always bound by physical death. The Quran calls to man to not be deceived by the world which his hands have created and to not forget the fundamental purpose for his creation, his self, which is his only means to conquer his fear and transcend death. Parwez presents the argument that only once man intellectually grasps the light of Allah's Wahi can he realize his true potential. Without this light, the human intellect cannot free itself from the shackles of its emotive imbalances. This aspect is argued in detail in his book, The Human Self and Iblis, and Shaitan, being the emotive side of human cognition. Despite a vast surplus in physical resources, the human intellect struggles on its own to create a system which can adequately cater for the physical needs of all of humanity, and the requirements for the development of his self forever elude him. The development of the human self is only possible through the guidance provided by the Quran. This aspect is the focus of discussion in all of the writings of Parwez. Parwez also studied and analyzed the pursuits of the human intellect from the time of Plato, a period of 2,500 years, with a view to proving that finding an appropriate and successful solution for human problems is outside the realm of the human intellect functioning on its own. The method of the intellect is empirical, i.e., it selects a certain path in life and pursues this for a period. Even centuries pass in this pursuit, then after its failure, realizing its limitations, it abandons this course and attempts another technique. During this empirical process humanity suffers and creates further problems for itself. Parwez presented this research and his conclusions in his book titled, Insan Ne Kiya Sacha. He then discussed the issue of solving human problems using the Quran and stated that since the Wahi from Allah is not affected by human emotions and biases, hence the solution presented by it can meet all the needs of human life on this planet. The system, Deen, which is established based on the permanent values of the Quran, will not only meet the physical needs of every human being at a fundamental level but will also help to create an environment in the world conducive to the development of the human self. The accountable nature of man is fundamental to this concept. The Quran declares, Allah created the heavens and the earth as al-haqq, so that each self is recompensed for what it does and no one is treated unjustly. 45:22. This verse refers to the functioning of the law of requital, informing us that we are each individually responsible for our choices which have consequences affecting both ourselves and others. Each one of us has a self which evolves in direct proportion to what it does during the course of this finite life which ends with our physical death. This self, whose fountainhead is divine energy, provides us with our consciousness, and this consciousness has the potential to expand if it acquires iman and then performs salih deeds. It does not simply disappear after our physical demise. The second point relates to the question of the authority to formulate laws for fellow human beings. The Quran proclaims, "No human being has this right, that Allah gives him a code of laws, power, and messengerhood, and he should start to dictate to the people that you follow my commands instead of the commands of Allah." 3:78. Due to all human beings being equal, no man has the right to rule over another human being directly, or through man-made laws, as this undermines the human respect and dignity with which each human child is blessed from the time of birth. 17:70. As long as there are man-made laws being followed in any land in the world without a divine justification, man cannot realize his inherently dignified nature and is instead degraded. The Quran intends that man frees himself from this degradation by following the divine laws willingly, experiencing the tangible results of advancing forward in this physical life and in his life beyond death. At a fundamental level, we need to come to terms with certain facts of our creation and subsequent existence in our finite life on this earth. 1. Our free will and consciousness give meaning to both our inner and the outer worlds. Our sense of identity is acquired through this experience of lived life formed by our beliefs, values, prejudices, education, childhood, etc., accumulating on our journey forward. 2. We are physically embedded in a biological system and socially into a man-made one, therefore we will inevitably encounter circumstances which were not of our own creation. In the modern concept of democratic capitalism, man uses an economic scale to measure his worth. His struggle in life is reduced to his accumulation of material wealth. 3. The default position of man is to accept his circumstance as a fait accompli, and not to ask questions which give access to a higher reality, e.g., the purpose of our existence, the nature and implication of death, the systems around us and how they came to be, the functioning of accountability and morality in individual and collective life, etc. And those rare individuals who do seek answers, search within the context of the man-devised systems, therefore searching too often at the level of the problem itself, failing to move beyond the immediate to a higher level of analysis. The Quran states that regarding those who look for true guidance, Allah guides them to his path. 93:7. The Quran puts a very high value on each human being and draws our attention to this fact that the visible universe around us is created for man, as it is he who gives meaning to this universe, implying that biological and historical circumstance is the intended starting point for man's journey forward. We contain a part within us called ourself, nafs, which has numerous latent potentials, some of which we bring out in the course of our physical life without Quranic guidance, but there are numerous others which are in a latent form and need the Quranic light to manifest these in this life and also in the next life. Illustrating through an example, the Quran presents two facts before us. Firstly, Allah exists and his concept based on divine attributes can be understood intellectually, and this can serve as a model for the human self. Secondly, the hereafter exists, and with it absolute accountability. The potential to understand these two concepts is present within our cognitive capacity. Only through the Quran can we effectively define these two concepts and derive benefit. The Quran states that every human deed has an objective weight, defined by the scales presented in the Quran. Only by understanding these scales in relation to his self and Allah can the individual effectively map his movement forward into the future. Thus the true worth of a human being is defined clearly in relation to these two entities defined as al-haq or absolute truth as set out by the Quran. The self is a reflection of the choices of the individual, it defines his inner experience from which he contends with the outer world. With this self, man is burdened by responsibility. He seeks a bargain for this burden, exchanging responsibility for rights. The Quran states that before man can make demands of his outer reality, he must first accept the burden on his self, in that every deed, every intention, even every thought leaves its mark on his self and shapes his inner and subsequently his outer reality. This is called the law of requital, the equivalent of the law of cause and effect in the physical domain. The question before us remains, how to act so that this law benefits us and does not destroy us. Parwez attempts to explain the Quranic verses using the Quran itself, meaning that his work remains the truest and most coherent exposition of the Quran in literature today, a great favor to humanity. The Quran repeatedly warns us not to follow any ilah other than Allah of the Quran as he has clearly described. Allah presents himself as an abstract concept to serve as a higher model for the human self. The use of reasoning to understand the Quran is crucial, for the intellect is the medium to al-haq. The Quran declares, "Those who, when they are admonished with the signs of their Rabb, droop not down at them as if they were deaf or blind." 25:73. In this volume Parwez has covered various topics related to Chapter 1. Surah Al-Fatiha, and the initial verses of Chapter 2, Surah Al-Baqarah, which include the concept of Allah, the question of good and evil, the psychology of hypocrisy, munafiqat, and kufr, the system of rububiyyat, sustenance, and the rise and fall of nations, etc. To be correctly understood, these should be viewed in the context of the system of deen. These writings appeal to our sense of the divine, of that which transcends the banality of the immediate and material reality. They seek to define the immaterial both within us and within the universe. It details the system of deen which has the potential to solve human issues at the most fundamental level of analysis, including the issue of death and what lies beyond it. It introduces the concept of life after death, asserting its reality and seeks to define it conceptually. If the life of the hereafter exists, and its recognition and acceptance as noted in the Quran brings about a tangible and discernible transformation in our consciousness, then we can gain access to Allah's assistance through universal laws in this world. Human suffering, although universal, is not the intended endpoint for man. The emancipation of man from his sufferings is a lifelong individual and collective pursuit. Deen is the reconciliation between the individual and the collective, the material and the immaterial, the inner and the outer life of man. In such a system the human self reaches that state of development where it becomes assured of its success both in this life and in the life of the hereafter. The following quote from Erich Fromm's book, Man for Himself, concisely sums up the lost and bewildered state of man when he is devoid of the guidance from Allah. Man can react to historical contradictions by annulling them through his own action, but he cannot annul existential dichotomies, although he can react to them in different ways. He can appease his mind by soothing and harmonizing ideologies. He can try to escape from his inner restlessness by ceaseless activity in pleasure or business. He can try to abrogate his freedom and to turn to himself into an instrument of powers outside himself, submerging his self in them. But he remains dissatisfied, anxious, and restless. There is only one solution to his problem: to face the truth, to acknowledge his fundamental aloneness and solitude in a universe indifferent to his fate, to recognize that there is no power transcending him which can solve his problem for him. Man must accept the responsibility for himself and the fact that only by using his own powers can he give meaning to his life. But meaning does not imply certainty. Indeed, the quest for certainty blocks the search for meaning. Uncertainty is the very condition to impel man to unfold his powers. If he faces the truth without panic, he will recognize that there is no meaning to life except the meaning man gives his life by the unfolding of his powers. By living productively, and that only constant vigilance, activity, and effort can keep us from failing in the one task that matters, the full development of our powers within the limitations set by laws of our existence. p. 32. Note in this excerpt that the uncertainty of human existence is accepted as a fact, whereas the Quran declares that man will never live in uncertainty during his existence if he accepts the guidance of Wahi. The Quran, all the darknesses confronting man in his earthly life will disappear in the light of this guidance. This translation seeks to keep as close as possible to the original Urdu text in its choice of appropriate words and terms, and close attention has also been paid to convey those meanings which the author intended to convey in his interpretation of the Quranic verses. If readers find anything which may be out of order with the original Urdu text, please feel free to convey it to the Talloohi Islam Trust and, where appropriate, corrections will be made in any revised edition. I wish to thank and acknowledge the support provided by Hussain Kais Rani of Talloohi Islam Trust, Lahore, Muhammad Salim Akhtar Khan of Idara, Talloohi Islam, Lahore, and Asif Jalil of Talloohi Islam, Karachi. I am profoundly grateful to my wife for her help and encouragement in the translation and editing of this work. Finally, this work is a translation, and as such any ambiguity in the text in the English version which is not present in the Urdu version is my responsibility as a translator and editor and not that of the original author. If readers have any questions or comments after reading this work, they are welcome to contact the Talloohi Islam Trust. Ejaz Rasool. Glasgow, UK. June 2023.